Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about my thoughts on the overall meta so far on patch 8.13, and then we're going to be talking about the 8.14 PBE, so what's upcoming next week with the PBE. We're going to be looking at Surrender at 20. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps other people find the content on the channel as well. I'm also on Twitter, at the Strat Prof, and on Facebook, at the Strategy Professor. If you know anyone else that might be interested in the content, give them a shout out. We'd love to have them join the community. Also stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. I'm very interactive with the chat. We have a warm, friendly community, so come check it out sometime. All right, let's go ahead and get in here. It's important to note as we get started that this is not necessarily what's actually going to happen on patch 8.14. A lot of this stuff is probably going to happen, but just keep in mind this is on the public beta, and sometimes this stuff doesn't make it to live. So be sure to watch the live patch notes that I release whenever Riot releases the live patch notes, usually on Tuesday in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. Typically they release them around like 2 to 3 p.m. It's not an exact date, or not an exact time rather, but that's usually when they do it, and then the patch goes live on Wednesday morning around 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, you can find this Google Doc in the description if you want to read along. I only did a Google Doc, a very short one, just for what I think should happen in the meta overall, which I'll talk about for the first probably 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll go over the PBE itself, and I'm just going to read what's on Surrender at 20 and just give you my thoughts on it as we go along. So you can find the Google Doc in the description. You can also find timestamps. If you just want to jump to the PBE part, you can do that as well. Okay, so overall, I think the meta is pretty good. There are a couple of outliers that are a little problematic, but I think most things are pretty good in the meta. I know this is a really hated meta, or I'm pretty sure it is, but I think a lot of that is just really bad press. I don't think that Riot articulated why they were doing the stuff that they did well enough, and I think a lot of people think it's an accident, or that they had balancing problems, or whatever. So, and they got a lot of bad press from YouTubers who are trying to capitalize on the confusion of people by saying League's dead, or AD carry's dead, or funneling's killing League, and all this stuff like that. I just think it was a lot of changes really quickly, and it confused a lot of people. And also seasonally, this is just not a time when a lot of people are super hardcore about League. In the summertime, for whatever reason, it dips a little bit. And then also it's in the middle of the season itself, so it's not the beginning of the season, it's not the end, and so there's not as much hype around it. There's competition from Fortnite, but I think a lot of it has been a PR mistake by Riot to not explain why these things are happening the way they're happening. And they're innovative, they're interesting, being able to see something like a Vlad bot lane, or a Mord bot lane, or a funnel comp, I think keeps the game fresh and interesting. But in solo queue especially, people are always looking for excuses, and this funky stuff just it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, I think. So anyways, AD carry champions are still viable. Most games still have AD carries. AD carries win more than most other champions bot lane. I mean, if we look at, I can pull up Analytics here really quickly, bot lane meta is not dead. It's important to keep in mind that, if I could type, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of this stuff is overhyped, over-sensationalized, and that we remember the weird stuff, right? We remember that time we had a Yasuo bottom who went 0-10, and we just don't remember the other, 95% of the time where we had a standard AD carry bot laner. We just selectively forget that one game where Twitch went 0-10 also in the bot lane, right? We think, oh, it's because there's this weird pick bot lane. It's no, bot laners feed even on normal AD carries a lot of the time, right? So if we look at pick rate, for example here, the most played champions in bot lane, Lucian, Ezreal, Jhin, Kai'Sa, Misfortune, Jinx, so on and so forth. That at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. The 11 most played champions bot lane are all traditional AD carries, right? If you look at win rate, champions that are played more than 5% of the times, if it has just a 0.8 play rate or a 1.6, that's too small of a sample size. That could just be one tricks. That could be into very specific matchups. That could be a Smurf that's doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, we've got Misfortune, Draven. Yasuo is the only one that has over a 5% play rate that's going to have a high win. I guess Swain kind of does as well. But most of the other champions are going to be AD carries, right? AD carry, AD carry, and AD carry. So yeah, I mean that's just important to keep in mind is that 80 carries are still primarily played in the bot lane. They still win games. 80 carry's not dead. If you're wondering why the funky bot lane's going on, I explained it in this video like pretty much right when it happened, before a lot of other people did, in my alt bot explanation. So be sure to check that video out if you haven't already. So 80 carries, still okay. They're giving him some buffs. They're going to bring him even more into the fold. I don't think they've completely disappeared. Now, Jinx and Caitlyn haven't been that good this patch, but things like Lucian, Twitch, Draven, and then even if you're a good Ezreal or a good Kai'Sa player, they're still pretty good. Yeah, I think that enchanters, tanks, and AP are pretty well balanced. Like, you're starting to see, like, tanks are still kind of rare in solo queue, and, you know, assassins are still, you know, the dominant, like, most powerful force right now, but enchanters are still kind of around. AP champions are still, you know, a little bit around. Now, this is especially in terms of supports, but I think in all roles, there's a relative balance here, with tanks being maybe slightly weak. But overall, it's becoming more balanced all the time. Funneling is bad for PR, so public relations. Funnel just looks bad. A lot of people think that it looks funky. A lot of people think that it's anti-fun. So I think that funneling is a problem that they need to address. I think there are ways to counter it. If you look at win percentages in pro play, it really doesn't work that much. In solo queue, unless it's a booster, it really doesn't work that well. So I think this is just, you know, a case of bad publicity rather than something actually being overpowered. It's just all the YouTubers, all capsers, you know, and pro players complaining about it. And that it just looks weird. And that's the funny thing about this is so many people complain and try wacky stuff all the time. They're like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, Ashe in the jungle, or I'm going to go top lane Jinx or whatever. Like, a lot of players try to do that. They try to break the meta, right? They watch all these all caps videos with obscure champions and obscure builds, and they're really into that and trying it out. But when there is something that's actually obscure that does win sometimes, then all of a sudden people are all up in arms and crazy about it. It's like, do y'all want weird stuff or not? Do you want innovative, interesting new stuff or not? It's like all of a sudden everyone acts like they're this old curmudgeon. It's like, I remember League back in my day, we gotta have all crit 80 carries and that's it. We gotta have mid laners that just play control mages and that's it. Just playing good, clean League of Legends. Like, nobody does that in like silver, bronze, and gold. But all of a sudden everyone's an expert, you know, on like what's ideal for the game. I don't know. I just think that it's kind of ironic. People are just always looking for something to be mad about, I guess. But anyways, as if they were always playing like the most viable, like everyone's always playing Caitlyn bot lane, or everyone has always played Orianna mid lane or something like that, right? No, they don't. I tell you, they don't. But anyways, Smite jungler is another thing that's bad PR just because it looks funky once again now. Or Smite non-junglers. So, like, this goes hand in hand with the funneling comp. But sometimes people even run Smite assassins like Talon. There's been some hype about that recently. Smite Talon, Smite Zoe, stuff like that. That's not necessarily in a funnel comp, but people are still running Smite. So I think people running Smite in non-jungler roles is bad publicity, even though, once again, I don't think it's that effective most of the time in solo queue. At least for people that aren't challengers. But, you know, it looks weird. Everyone's up in arms about it. So, you know, that's probably something that they need to nerf. Or they need to come out and articulate, like, why they think it's good. The Rageblade nerfs are pretty good. I like that. It seems to have stabilized Yi and Kai'Sa. I haven't seen them as much. They don't tend to take over the game as much as they used to. They're still good. Like, they're not completely gutted. But I think that those nerfs achieved their goal of bringing those champions down to earth a little bit. So that was a good thing. So overall, I think the meta's okay. I just think that they need to probably touch funneling and Smite, not because they're overpowered, but just because people won't shut up about it, primarily, just to help with the PR of the game. Okay, so top 5 things that, and I'm going to go over just top 5 things that I think need nerfs, and top 5 things that I think they could buff or change to help improve the meta or improve the games in some way. So let's start with the nerfs. So I think that Aatrox and Talon definitely need nerfs. Aatrox got like 10 buffs or something, like hot fixed Aatrox. I don't know if it's going to let us pull him up here, but I can try. Let me see. This website's been pretty squirrely lately. Okay, it's going to give it to us. So what I want to see is the history. Can we see the history? Yes. Okay. This. Look at these hot fixes. That's why. So he was relaunched. He got 1. It resets his auto attack timer. That's a buff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 buffs. Did I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buffs. He got 9 buffs on patch 8.13 as hot fixes. So that's why he's overpowered. He got 9 buffs. So he needs some nerfs. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on the champion exactly what. It seems like he's really difficult to kill, and he does quite a bit of damage, so I would probably knock down some of his healing a little bit. Yeah, I would probably knock down the healing and maybe lower some of his base damages and just force him, if he wants to do damage, to buy damage. So I would bring down some of his ratios. I hope they don't hit his mobility. Like, I think they're thinking about hitting his ult timer. I really like, because that's a really cool part about his kit. I don't want to see him have this 160-second ult timer. I just want them to lower his damage. Like, just make him buy damage if he wants to do damage. Like, I saw an Aatrox rush Spirit Visage in a game, and he still did a lot of damage. Like, first item Spirit Visage, and he was still doing a lot of damage. So I want him to keep his mobility. I want him to keep his, you know, his ultimate and just, like, the coolness of his kit. But I just think his damage should be down a little bit. Next attack, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not going to read all of this, but just lower his damage a little bit on his stuff. I'm not sure exactly where, but I'd have to study that a bit more. But, you know, just lower the damage a little bit in there somewhere. Maybe lower his healing. I think that's fine. Just make him choose. Like, he can't have both. Like, ridiculous tankiness and healing and ridiculous damage. One or the other. Talon, just too much damage. It's just, his ratios are too high. I mean, 200% bonus AD damage. And there's not enough skill for him to warrant that damage. You know, there are some. There's like, you know, you can get an auto attack. Does this reset his auto as Noxian Diplomacy? You know, they could add some more skill expression to his kit, so they could, like, lower the width of this or lower the range on it, make it 600 range instead of 650. Like, that's one way to go about it. Which would be okay. Because part of it also is he wave clears so well for an assassin without using any of his, like, escapes. So, like, Zed can wave clear too, but, like, his good wave clear typically requires him to use his shadow. I think Zed is, like, the perfect sort of combination for an assassin. It's like, yeah, he can get fed. There's lots of outplays, but you have to actually hit a lot of stuff, a lot of skill shots. You have to hit multiple shurikens, and I think Zed is one of the better designed assassins out there. And there's plenty of time for counterplay. You could barrier, you can get a shield from somebody. You know, Zed's still going to kill the AD carry if he gets really fed, but I feel like Zed is just a healthier version of Talon. Like, Talon is just like you jump over the wall and just roll your hand across the keyboard and just one-shot somebody. Rinse and repeat. So, like, they could increase the cooldown on his ult. Once again, I like for champions to have their abilities. I like them to have their ult. I think 100 is a little light. They could probably take that up to 120, and that would probably be fair. But I like his ability to jump over walls. I mean, they could even let him jump more. I'd be fine with that. If they want to, like, give him some compensatory, you know, buffs, like lower his damage quite a lot, and then give him, like, more chances to use his ult, more chances to use his wall jumping, I think that would be cool. These ratios have to go. Like, this has to go down to, like, 150%. Or just, like, some of these have to go down a little bit. It's just too much damage overall. If they want to increase his melee and, like, force him to melee strike somebody, I like that idea. Where he loses his gap closer, because this is his gap closer, or his, like, big-time damage for extra damage. So I think that, you know, maybe they could do something like lower the range on this or something, or, I don't know. I like the choice of having a gap closer or having big extra damage. So maybe they could increase the damage that he gets if he does it in melee, but, like, less damage if he uses it as a gap closer. Something like that. I think the Rake should definitely do less damage to minions. Just to give him less wave clear. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe hitting his wave clear, like, maybe drop this down to 150% bonus AD, and then have this do, like, the return damage only does 50% damage to minions or something like that. Just lower his wave clear a little bit. So yeah, I think Talon's problematic because he just comes online too fast, does too much damage, too mobile, and too much wave clear. I mean, when he can take Smite, a lot of Talons now, top end people are taking Smite, and they're still one-shotting people, you know, at level 6, even without Ignite, and that's just wrong a lot of the time. That they can just disrespect the lane enough to just run Smite. So that's probably how I would fix that. Okay, as far as Smite itself, to kind of stop some of these shenanigans, or not to stop, but just to add a higher opportunity cost to taking Smite as a mid laner, or to taking, trying to do the funnel comp or whatever, I would say that anyone who has Smite should get 50% of the experience from lane minions. I think that would be fair, because that would say, hey, if you want to be able to go farm the jungle and get some extra experience, that's fine, but you're not getting as much experience from the lane, right? So you can't get all of this, just like a ton of experience. If you want to run funnel comp, fine. You're going to give a lot of extra gold to the person, but they're not going to get as much experience in the lane, especially if you run double Smite. I think that's fair. Junglers shouldn't be getting a lot of experience in lane. They shouldn't be sitting in lane for a long time if they have Smite, right? They should be in the jungle doing things. If they gank, you know, they shouldn't be there for that long. And this would also compensate for junglers, I think, being too high of a level early on, especially if they camp a lane, because they're still leeching experience even if they camp. This would give them more incentive to go clear out the jungle. So I think that this would not impact real junglers that much that are using it, you know, in the jungle. And this would help stop people from running it in lanes. So, like, you could do something... I mean, honestly, don't know what else you could do that wouldn't hurt junglers even more. I mean, you could just hurt... You could try to pick out specific champions that abuse this strategy and just try to hurt their wave clear in lane. So, like, Talon, since he's taking Smite, you could, you know, hurt his wave clear on W even more. You could hurt Zoe's wave clear even more. But, like, the problem is the Smite, not necessarily those... Talon still is a problem. But the champions that are taking Smite, it's the Smite that's the problem. I think, not the champions. So just lower their lane experience 50%. I mean, maybe 50% is too harsh, maybe 25%, but just something to keep them out of the lanes with it. Or at least if they want to be in the lane and they're going to get the jungle experience, it's going to even it out. So they still get all the extra gold. It's not touching their gold, but it is hurting their lane experience. So I just don't know how else you could balance it, other than, like, taking away the bonus experience they get in the jungle, but that would hurt junglers. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything else they can do to try to fix this thing right here. Or, I mean, you could buff other summoners to make it a higher opportunity cost. You could buff Ignite, or you could buff... But that's so dangerous. Ignite is so strong already. The Smite's the problem. And the experience. It's about getting an experience advantage over your laner by running in there. I mean, you could make it to where Smite doesn't heal anymore, or just something, but that's going to hurt the jungler. Just the best thing to do is just lower the XP that you get off of lane minions if you have Smite. I think that would fix it. I think to fix assassins, instead of nerfing each individual assassin, I think just nerfing Electrocute would be good. Electrocute's a little over the top for a rune, I think, and a lot of it has to do, especially on AD champions, with the bonus attack damage scaling. It has a 0.5 bonus attack damage ratio on it. That's way too much for a rune. That's way too much scaling. So if they just drop this down to 30% like the AP, they could even drop the AP and just give them both like a 0.25 or something, or lower the base damage. I decided, like, maybe just a little bit of a hit to both. So, like, maybe lose 10 early, go to 40 to 200 base damage, and then take the bonus attack damage down to 30% to match the AP. And that would help. That would help stop some of the scaling. Because what happens is when they get a lot of AD, they're getting the bonus attack damage and they're getting lethality. And so this extra electrocute damage is also doing additional damage because it counts as physical damage. And so lethality and other types of, like, armor penetration apply to this. So I think that would help bring champions like Talon into line a little bit more. It would help out against champions like, Fizz or Lux. But they're, like, they're nerfing Fizz, they're nerfing Talon, I think, on the PBE. And I think the real problem is just that rune's too good. This combination of a rune with sudden impact is just too strong on champions that have a dash. So you could nerf sudden impact as well if you wanted to, but I think just nerfing electrocute scaling would help out. So that's what I would do. That would bring the assassins down a little bit. And then Conqueror, I would change it from 20% true damage to 15%. I think that Conqueror champions just do a bit too much true damage to tanks. So I think just bringing that down a little bit. They can still get the bonus AD. You know, if you want to give them like a little bit of bonus AD, like maybe 5 extra AD in exchange for this, whatever, you know, that's fine. But I think just 20% true damage is just a bit much on champions that can abuse this in lane. So I think it would still be a great rune. I think it would still be good on champions like Darius, Kled, you know, a lot of these other champions. But just bringing it down, just bringing in the true damage a little bit, I think would help out. I mean, that is 25% less, but that rune's just too strong, I think. It's just pushing too many tanks out of the lanes. Okay, so that's what I would nerf. I think this would bring a greater equilibrium. It would bring tanks in a little bit more. It would bring in control mages that want to use things like Airy instead of Electrocute. It would bring them in line a little bit more. Bring them back into the fold. So I think that's a good start. That's what I would like to see. As far as like buff opportunities, I think to fix the crit problem is pretty simple. All you have to do is just lower the items by 200 gold again, bring them back to their original cost, and then just reduce the crit by 5%. That's gold equivalent. You know, because crit is worth... If we look here, I don't know if I have crit on here or not. Crit is worth 40 gold a piece now. And, like, the problem is they're coming on, like, that the crit champions were coming, they think. I don't think that crit champions were that overpowered when they changed this, because I thought assassins were already making it difficult to play things like Jinx. But this would still lower the overall efficiency of those items, but it would make the cost a bit more reasonable. So instead of 30% crit, it would just be 25% crit, and then you just bring it back down to 2,700 gold. Because crit, as you can see, is worth 40% or 40 gold each. 30%, 1,200 gold, 40 gold each, right? So it would be cost neutral. It would still be, you know, roughly a 75% gold efficient item. Maybe a little bit less because the whatever, but you're not giving them any extra value on the item. That still, you're taking off 200 gold worth of crit and you're lowering the price by 200. But this would allow the AD carries to get a cleaner power curve and still have a little bit less power early on because they're going crit and they're going to be strong later. And then this would feel so much better with Infinity Edge, because Infinity Edge right now, a lot of times, you have to buy 2 crit items before you get to 100%, because it has this double crit effect, and it feels really bad, you know, if you buy like Rapid Fire Cannon, Static Shiv, then you're going to be at 60% crit, and then you go to 120% crit, and it feels like you're just wasting optimization. But now if you go down to 25% base, then if you get Infinity Edge, it goes to 50%. And if you go 2 crit items, if you go Rapid Fire Cannon plus Static Shiv, that gives you 50%, and then Infinity Edge would double it to 100%. So it's just cleaner numbers. It's 25% off of 1 crit item, it's 50% off of 2 crit items, and then it's 100% when you get your Infinity Edge. Or if you want to do 1 crit item plus Infinity Edge, it's 50%. It's nice round numbers. There's no wasted stats. There's no feels bad. And it's cost neutral in terms of the items. And it smooths out their power curve. I mean, it's perfect. And it keeps them a little bit lower than they were, which is what Riot wants to do. So, I mean, I think everybody wins in that equation. You know, 80 or crit marksmen are still weaker in the early game than caster marksmen like Lucian. But they have a smoother power curve as it goes on, and just a much cleaner stats. So that's what I would like to see. I think Infinity Edge is okay. I mean, it's a little goofy. They did lower the... Didn't they lower the cost? I thought they lowered the cost. I guess they didn't? Maybe they were thinking about lowering the cost last patch and they didn't. No, they lowered it by 100. How efficient is it? It's 2,800, but it's, I still feel like they could bring this cost down a little bit. I would bring it down to 3,400. Maybe lower the AD a little bit. Just lower the stats on it. Take it down to 70. So that's like 350 lower cost. Or 75. What would 75 be? Or no, not 75. 5. It's 180, right? 175. I would do something like that. Like, make it 75 and then lower the cost to 3,400. I think that would be fair. Because it is a big ticket item. At 3,600, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I would probably lower the total AD on it. Something like that. I mean, I know it's awkward because it builds out of 2 BF swords. Just get that cost down a little bit and then take off some of the stats. That's what I would do. And I think that would help out a lot. But definitely with the crit items, that's what I would probably do. Okay. Another thing is I think that they need just like maybe one more viable tank item. Just the tank itemization still needs a little bit of help in the bot lane, especially for solo queue. I think Enchanter itemization is still way better. You know, Ardent Sensor and Redemption are still really good. Enchanters can still get Locket and feel pretty good about it. Tanks have a hard time getting CDR a lot because Locket doesn't have CDR on it, and the tier 2 gold item, the Targons, doesn't have CDR on it. I would put CDR on Targons and like lower the health a little bit if they had to. So maybe buff Targons. I don't know. That's a little dangerous, but either way, just add a bit more CDR, add a bit more versatility to the mix. Especially have like another big armor item that's really like helpful, that's a low cost. Because right now, I mean, I guess you can get like, you can get Knight's Vow, but like some of the some champions can't use Knight's Vow that well, especially like Thresh. Kind of get screwed over by itemization. Just like champions that might want a little bit of armor that are like considered ranged. But anyways, my idea here is Frozen Heart has historically been a very good support item. It's just like hasn't been updated to be, you know, 21st century or whatever. Like it just hasn't been relevant for the last like 3 seasons on most champs. And so I would like to see them lower the cost down to like 2,200, maybe 2,300, but just get it somewhere near there. And then lower the stats on it. It has so much mana. Why does it have 500 mana or 400 mana even? Like, who needs that? Like, there might be a couple of champions who'll say, oh, but a Mumu needs it, or oh, but they really don't. You don't need that much mana. There might be like a champion or two that wants this, but it's just too much mana for a tank. Tanks don't. Like, no. Mana's one of the, I mean, like, mana's okay, but, like, take a look at the Zeke's, right? That only has, like, I think 200 mana on it. Much better, much more efficient. If you look at, like, what they've done to Zeke's, it has 250. This is a perfect blend of stats. Now, yes, the active on Zeke's is very strong, but this is the kind of stat line that they need for something like, Frozen Heart. This is what they should do, right? They should make it around somewhere between 2,200 and 2,300 gold. Just have a modest stat line with 10% CDR, somewhere around 90 resistances, some combination of armor and magic resist, 10% CDR, and somewhere between 200 to 300 mana. It's perfect. That's exactly what they need. And then just some kind of active that does something that's useful. That's about 100% efficient. That's exactly what they need. And that's what I'm proposing that they do with Frozen Heart. So if we look at Frozen Heart, the big problem is it's just too many stats. Like, the big tanks aren't going to get this item most of the time because it's just too many wasted things on it, right? So I think that lowering the mana is obviously a step in the right direction. Lowering the cooldown to 10%. 20% is just really outdated. You don't need that on items. A lot of tank items anymore because most of your items are going to have 10% on it. And I like scaling up over time, which is 10% per item. So it doesn't feel like you're ever wasting it. It doesn't feel bad when you go over the cap. And then lowering that armor a little bit. And turning this, I mean, the reason that they nerfed this a long time ago and kind of brought it out of the meta is because it has this invisible aura. And Riot really doesn't like invisible power. Like, they've gotten rid of all of the aura items in the game, pretty much. Like, they've turned all of them into actives, so now we have, like, Redemption and Locket. Whereas back in the day, you would have, like, Bulwark, Frozen Heart, what was it, Spectral Shroud or something. There were, like, a bunch of aura items. Will of the Ancients, stuff like so. They've just taken all of the auras out and they've turned them into actives. Do that with this. Change the cripple to like a 20% cripple or something like that, or add a slow on it, whatever, and just make it an active where it lasts for like 10 seconds and it's on like a 60-second cooldown, kind of like Randuin's, which applies a slow, but this would apply an attack speed slow. But it's only for like a very specific window of power. So just turn this into an active, buff it up a little bit if you need to, just make it 20% instead of 15%, something like that. And then just lower the stats across the board. So what I was saying is minus 500 gold in cost, so 2200 gold item, knock off 200 mana, make it 10% CDR, so take off 10% CDR, and then make the active a 60-second cooldown. And if you know, I think that's about right price-wise. If you need to take off 10 armor, whatever, that's fine too. But just make it just like a super heavy armor item, like no magic resist. It's just straight up armor against heavy attack champions that have that cripple in there. So I think that would give it a great niche. I think it would be... I don't think it would be abused by other lanes that much. I mean, it's possible, but I still think a lot of them would prefer other armor items, like Dead Man's Plate or Randuin's or whatever, but I don't know. I think they should try to balance it like that, where they're knocking off a lot of the stuff that people don't need and they're lowering the cost on things. Locket is another one I would like to see changed a little bit to be less of a generalist item and more of like a very specific anti-magic item. Because right now people can still get Locket even against heavy AD teams because the shield is just so good on the active. So take off 20 armor on it. So that would bring it down to 10 armor. And then add in plus 10 magic resist, and then add in 10% CDR. So this is cost neutral, but it is making it much more, it's giving 10% CDR, which is great, because that's what tanks really need in the bot lane. They need to get to that 40% CDR, because they're so reliant on their cooldowns for crowd control and all that stuff. So that would be great, and this would further clarify, this is an anti, like, AoE magic resist item. So I think that would be good. This would keep other people from getting this item too. This would like keep junglers and other champs from getting this because it wouldn't have the armor, which means it would be a lot harder to tank Baron or to tank towers or jungle minions or whatever because it would have a lot less armor on it. So I think this would clarify its purpose. Like you're paying a big price for that item active in exchange for... you know, having less armor. Or they could just take armor completely off of it and just add on magic, or a little bit of health and magic resist. Health is a little dangerous because the shield itself scales with health. But, you know, they could do something like, keep it at 60 armor. Let me see what that converts to. Do I not have a calculator? So right now it has 30 armor, which is 900 gold value. You gotta take off like minus 270 for the CDR, because I would like the CDR on that for sure. Then divide by 2.66. It's like 230 health. So you could add 200 health on there, or something like that. 200 health. See, 10 armor would be something like that, right? 200 or 250 health. Something like that. So just make it like 60 magic resist, you know, 200 health, 10% CDR. What does that add up to? Let's see. So 200 health, I think is 500. 532, 60 magic resist. Plus, let's see, that's health, magic resist, plus CDR... 1882. And you're paying... You could knock down the price. I think it's 20... Is it 23 or 2200? It might only be 2200. I think it's 2200. So you're still dipping negative for it. I'm just trying to see just how negative it would be. To be a little bit more cost efficient. Did I do that right? So that's, what, 532. Okay, so that would make it a little more cost efficient. So, I mean, that's a dangerous game to play, but it would have 0 armor on it, like 0. So that would make you very, very vulnerable, like I said, for other champions. So I think it might be worth it to add in a bit more efficiency. If they need to, they could drop the health down to 150 or something like that. So it gives 150 health. Or they could increase the cost by 100 gold. I'd be okay with that if they made it a 2300 gold item instead of 22. Maybe that's the better way to do it. And then you're getting like 100 gold extra value, but it's increasing the cost. It would take you longer to build it, and it doesn't have any armor whatsoever, which is a huge liability for a lot of tanks. So I think that might be a better way to balance it. It doesn't need that much help. I just feel like finding some way to get 10% CDR on here and clarify that it's an anti-magic item would be really helpful. Now, another thing that I think would be really cool, and we'll move on and talk about the PBE right after this, but I think they should switch Presence of Mind and Taste of Blood in the rune tree. I think this is the easiest thing to open up a lot more build paths. Very simple fix. So if you don't know, Presence of Mind is like one of the coolest runes in the game, and it just makes absolutely no sense why it's in this tree, because it's based on like cooldowns. Like, this would be so awesome on so many champions, right? So if you get a takedown, which is a kill or an assist, then you get a refund on your ultimate, right? So you get 20% of your maximum mana back, which is great. And you get a 10% cooldown on your ultimate's sort of maximum remaining cooldown. Now that that applies after the cooldown reduction on Ultimate Hunter and just standard cooldown reduction. So, for instance, you know, if something has a 100-second cooldown, you have 40% CDR, then it's going to pretend that your maximum base cooldown is 60. So whenever you get a kill or an assist here, then it would take 6 seconds off of your ult. I think that's a really cool ability, especially if you could combine this with champions like with Zeke's, for example. So if you had like this rune plus Zeke's, then you would be able to activate Zeke's more often because your ultimate would be up more. And so I think that's a really cool rune. The problem is, like, this tree kind of sucks for anything that's not a marksman, because, like, the bonus that you get is attack speed, which, like, Karthus is an example who would really like this rune, or just other champs that have really long cooldowns, like maybe Twisted Fate or Galio would really like this. But they don't really want the attack speed that much, or it's like it's in kind of an awkward tree. So, like, just nobody takes it. But I think that it's really cool. It's got a lot of potential. This would also be cool with something like Essence Reaver, so that your ultimate, you know, is up more often. So, like a Xayah. Well, I mean, Xayah does, like, attack speed, but I just feel like it gets out-competed in this tree by Triumph, you know, all the time. But it's a really cool ability. And similarly, I think the Domination tree is pretty weak overall, primarily because if you can't take sudden impact, then this second tree feels really bad. So if you're not like playing an assassin or someone that has like a dash, this tree just feels awful. This is okay. This tree's like okay. This is good. So like the 4 slot and, you know, some of the runes are pretty good, like Halo Blade, Dark Harvest, things like that. Can feel pretty good. But like this stuff is pretty awful except for sudden impact. So I think that switching that would be great. So number one, it would allow like this to sort of clarify that you're an ultimate like burst assassin type of thing. So you could just go all in on like ults, right? You could get Presence of Mind and Ultimate Hunter and just really say, hey, like I'm going for ults here. Like I want to really play around my ult a lot. And then you could even do something like Predator if you have a hard engage ult. Like if you wanted to go all the way in the tree, there's stuff that complements that. You know, if your ult is based on like Electrocute or something, you want to do burst damage, you can work around that. So I think that is really cool. That would be like a theme of this tree. It could be like ultimate, you know, burst stuff. And then over in the other tree, this would add like more sustain to the lane. So if you're playing a really weak lane champion, like a Twitch or a Vayne or something that needs help, then you could get Taste of Blood. And you could also take like Taste of Blood, you know, Bloodline, Fleet Footwork, and just go with kind of this sustained theme. So that would make something like the Vayne, like the Twitch, You know, maybe like Kai'Sa in lane, a little bit more I mean, Kai'Sa's viable because we're late game, but it would help those champions out early game, the crit champions that get just crushed early off of something like a Lucian, who's going to have that power spike off of Blade of the Ruined King. So I think having Taste of Blood here for that extra sustain would really help out thematically with weaker AD carries, and it would also give people a better reason to go into domination. Especially if they want to get it as a secondary, because now they have good options. Like they could go, you know, all of these are good. It's just right now, like the Zombie Ward tree feels really bad if you're not a support. And then this feels really bad if you can't use sudden impacts. This would open it up, and that would help create competition with things like Bone Plating and Chrysalis, which kind of have a monopoly most of the time, or, you know, Stopwatch plus something else. You know, Stopwatch plus Cosmic Insight, which is becoming more popular. I think Domination is still a pretty weak tree unless you specifically can use, you know, sudden impact pretty much. So I think that would definitely help out a lot. And this would help out some champs that just don't have, that maybe want to run something like Electrocute or Halo Blades, but just can't, you know, just can't really find a way to do it. So I think that would be a really easy switch, and I think it would be awesome. And then finally, and we'll move on, I think that ZZ Rock Portal, I like having a macro item in the game. I know that Riot just got rid of Banner because they hate it. ZZ Rod is just a piece of trash item right now. And the reason for that is the minions suck. They get clogged up, they get blocked by lane minions, that they don't do any damage to them hardly, and so they just never get to actually go and hit the tower. It has a really long cooldown. It's like a 2-minute cooldown. It's very easy to go out and shut it down. The stats are like okay on the item itself, but it just doesn't have a lot of like clarity of purpose. It's like, is it supposed to be a siege item? Because the range on it is really short, but it can't actually get to the towers to deal damage. So I would clarify this as a support item and just make it really bad on non-supports. Because the reason they nerfed it originally back in 2016 is because champions like Udyr and Singed were abusing this around towers, because they just drop it near a tower and it would help them siege the tower really quickly. It applied too much extra map pressure. But make it a really high opportunity cost, like lower the resistances on it by a lot to like 40-40. You could even take it down to 35-35 if you want. Just make people really pay up for this item. As, you know, like, you're going to be squishy if you get this item. Make it like 2,200 gold, just like the other one, minus 500, so make it a support item. 60-second cooldown, so that you can actually use it every now and then. Make it 3 HP, so if they get a hold of it, they can kill it a lot faster than the 5. I think it has 5 hits on it right now. Make it easier to kill if they get to it. And the big change that I would make is no interaction with lane minions. It just walks right past them. Minions don't attack it. It doesn't attack minions. It just tries to walk into the tower. So champions can still attack it, and they can still attack the minions, but the lane minions will ignore it. Now you could say that because the lane minions ignore the portal itself, they don't attack the portal itself, but they do attack the little minions. So I would just say no interaction. That way you can't put it in a side lane and just have it push autonomously if you're not there. And also, it's going to have an easier time getting to the tower. If they need to nerf the damage a little bit, that's fine. I don't think they would. But I would clarify this as, we have a team that has a hard time sieging, so I want to drop this outside the tower, and if they don't come kill it, then it's going to take their tower slowly, you know, over the course of like a minute or something. It's probably going to take their tower. So that's how I would do it. It's just like help for teams that don't have really good siege. At a high opportunity cost. I mean, if you get this, you're not getting redemption, you're not getting locket, so you're going to be a lot worse at team fighting, but you have the opportunity to have decent siege. So I like having an item like that in the game. And I would say, like, if you're not within 700 range of it, then it deactivates. So you can't just drop it near a tower in top lane and go run somewhere else, or it just wouldn't work anymore, kind of like a Heimerdinger turret. And then I think it should take 2 hits to kill the minions, so not just 1. So the tower doesn't kill it instantly. So basically, if there's not a champion there that's actively trying to defend against this, then it's going to help you take down the tower, basically. Because like 1 tower shot won't kill it. That's what I think. So I would like to see it be a little more effective around towers, and a lot worse if it's not actively helping a champion who's trying to siege a tower. Okay, let's talk about PBE here really quickly then. So that's what I think should happen. It would be really cool if they did this, but let's see how much of this they're doing in terms of like changing up the meta and all that. Okay, so they're nerfing him numerous times now. Guess they're nerfing his damage. Nerfing some minion damage. They're increasing his cooldowns. I don't like that, but I guess whatever. Because that's the coolest part of his kit. So they're increasing his damage on his ult, but they're like nerfing the cooldown. I don't like that direction. But whatever, that's fine. He needs some nerfs. He got some nerfs. We'll see how it pans out. Little buff to Ari's charm. I like it. She's a little underpowered. She's not like terrible, but that's good. Cassio getting a buff on her Q. I like that. That's a skill shot. It's kind of hard to hit anyways. I wouldn't mind Cassio having a bit more damage. She takes forever to scale up. I like it. A little more damage, a little more AP ratio. Get her to build more AP early on. Get her to just maybe go Ludens and not go tier. I like that. She could use a little help. Gatling gun, who cares? That's not why people play Corki. Or don't play Corki. His cooldowns are too long. He just doesn't do enough damage. He's alright. Elise, okay, whatever. She got a little buff. Probably not going to matter. Fizz, we'll see. They've changed this around a lot. So basically, they're taking away a lot of his spike damage, which is his triple damage off of his W, and they're making it like an on-hit damage. I think that's pretty weak. That's a pretty big nerf to Fizz. I'm not going to pretend like I'm that upset. Like, that champion is very frustrating to play against, but I think that's a bit hardcore on him. I think they should give him something else. Like, at least, like, if he hits the shark... I feel like if he hits the shark, you should be dead, probably. But if he misses the shark, I don't think he should be able to kill you. Unless he hits it, so... Anyways, we'll see. I think there are other assassins that are more problematic than him, like Talon. But he's alright. I'm trying to think of how else they can make Fizz like interesting and fun with his W. I feel like it should be some kind of combination. Like, if he hits you with his shark, you should take extra damage, I think. If, I feel like if there was some way to, like, measure if he dodged with his Playful Trickster, then you would get some kind of bonus, but I don't know how they would check that out. Anyways, it's fine. Whatever. I mean, they're nerfing him a bit. We'll see. I am a little bit worried that maybe this brings back, like, Tank Fizz. If they give him too much on-hit damage, then he could just build really tanky, potentially. This is why they changed it originally, to try to make him a burst, because people were playing Tank Fizz top. But we'll see. Callista... Okay, that's just a tooltip update. That's already changed. Karma... damage lowered on her Q early on, but then the width is increased. I don't like that. It makes it easier to hit the Q, but you're not doing as much damage. Karma's got a lot of problems. I would like to just see them straight buff her. Like, just give her shield a bit of a buff or something like that. I think she's still, like, oppressive, like, still pretty good in lane. It's just, like, outside of lane. She just doesn't scale like she used to. Good nerf to Nocturne. That's already in the game. Why are they giving him attack speed? I don't know. Like, Pantheon just needs to rework, honestly. Like, he's just too one-dimensional. He's very Season 1-esque. Like, what they need to do, if they don't want to rework him, is just make his drop more efficient. Like, just give people less time to react when they see it. I think right now they have, like, 3 seconds or something. Or 2 seconds. If they need to lower the damage, fine. But he should be able to... I think it should be a lot more like Galio than like it currently is. Like right now he has to charge and then jump up and then there's like this huge delay and then he falls down. It's just like, just make it like Galio. Where it's like, boom, he jumps up and boom, he's down. Maybe give some CC to it. Like whenever he lands, anyone that's like in the circle, maybe not quite to the same level as like Galio knockup, but just even like a small half-second knockup or something. That would help him out tremendously because then he would have a bit more teamfight presence at least, where he could show up and like CC everybody briefly. So I like that idea. Give him a very brief CC, or at least slow him. If you don't want to knock him up, slow him or something. Cripple him, you know, lower their attack speed. Do something to him if you land on him. Because right now it's just not enough of a reward. It's very easy to dodge. And the only reward is you're there. And it's like, if you're fed, you can maybe jump on him and one-shot him. If not, then you're worthless. So I would like to see them give him a bit more utility, and I think that's a way to do it. But this attack speed thing is... I mean, someone pointed out on stream when I mentioned this, like, oh, that'll help him out in the jungle. It's like, yeah, maybe. He's still going to be bad, probably, in the jungle, so I don't know. I guess it helps out in the jungle a little bit. Yeah, I just think that I would rather see them make him more versatile late game. Because I think his early game's fine. It's good. It's just he's too dependent on that. So I would give him some more utility. Rakan, nerf to his health, whatever, that's probably fine. Make him a little squishier. Cooldown on Q at later levels, fine, whatever. Like, that's only going to matter if you max Q in lane, which is pretty terrible most of the time anyways, I think. You could get a couple of points maybe, if you really, really want to, and then you max W typically. But yeah, this is not going to matter that much, I don't think. Now, this does matter, the extra 10%, or the extra 10 seconds cooldown, but to be honest, Rakan does need a nerf. So, it's going to feel bad, but his ult, like 120 seconds for that kind of power is a little over the top. But that's fair. He's a bit strong. I would have hit his ratios a bit more, like just hit his AP ratios a little better. Just hit his base damage or something rather than his cooldowns, but that's fine. Like, hit the early damage on his W or on his Q or something like that. But that's alright. Okay, lots of extra damage on Rek'Sai, just 10%. Void Rush, extra 15%. So they're trying to make her do a lot more damage. We haven't seen Rek'Sai in a long time, so I guess I'm okay with that. I hope it's not too much damage, but whatever. We'll see. That's fine. Nerfing Sejuani's empowered stun. Like, if you hit it max range, why? Like, that's actually one of the more skillful things about her, and she's not even that strong right now. I don't think. I very rarely see her in solo queue or in pro play. Like, sometimes you see her in pro play, but like, there's a very clear counter to her that's very popular, and that's Trundle in pro play. And I think that I just don't think she's that impressive. Couple of Scion buffs, whatever. I don't think it's going to matter that much. He's still going to be relatively weak. And this is really nice for Sivir. Faster clear with the Boomerang Blade. The problem is, like, she's gated by mana early on more so than her cooldowns. So she needs either lowered mana costs, or I would prefer lower cooldown on her shield if you block a spell with it. So if you successfully block a spell with your spell shield, I think you should get like a 50% reduction on cooldown or something. Maybe not that much, but like a lot. Like maybe 3-second reduction on it. Just something. To where if you're doing good Sivir things, if you're blocking spells with it, you're going to be getting a lot more mana and you're going to be rewarded for that because you're going to be able to push a bit more. So I like the idea of block spells, push. This is okay. This will be a lot better later on in the game. Lower the early... I guess this is fine. I mean, he's getting played a bit in pro play. This will lower the power of his all-in, like, at very early levels. I mean, a 35-second level 1, like, slow, or whatever. I guess you would all-in at level 2, but, like, 1 point in it slow is a bit on the strong side, so I think that's fine. Okay, so they are lowering Talon's wave clear a little bit. I like that. I think he needs a bit more of a hit. Okay, they nerfed Talia. That seems to have gotten her out of the jungle. They nerfed her move speed, too, at some point. Tristana, more attack speed, more damage on explosive charge. She's actually, or the mana cost is lowered on explosive charge. She's actually in, like, an okay place right now. I mean, she's not, like, amazing statistically, but I played against a pretty decent one. Like, she can do a lot of damage if she jumps on you early and drops that bomb. I think she's really, like, underutilized right now. I think that she can be okay. Varus. Whatever, that's already on live. I don't think it's going to matter that much. The nerf to Rageblade hurt him big time. Vayne buff, not going to matter. Kai'Sa's just a better version of Bane. Vel'Koz, this is interesting. 80%, that's a huge ratio on a Q, like on a really good poke spell. So that's really strong. Now this is massive also. 110 cooldown instead of 130. This is exactly what Vi's been needing. So we'll see. Watch out for Vi. I think she definitely could be good after this. We'll have to see what other changes go through, but that's legit. I mean, that's basically 110 seconds early on, and it's like point click, you're dead, pretty much, on ganks. More range on Gravity Field is interesting. I don't know how much that's going to affect Victor, but I think they need to lower the cost on his augments, but we'll see. Less damage late game on his Nimbus Strike. That's good. I mean, Wukong's a little over the top in solo queue. Once he gets to like 2 items, he just like one-shots people. He got like one-shot an entire team, and it's a very low cooldown on his ult, so his numbers are a bit too high. So I think this is a decent place to start. Okay, W. Wow. Okay, now we're talking. Knocked 60 damage off of her, Oh, this champion, everybody hates this champion, except for people that main her. She's so frustrating. And, I mean, the biggest part is, like, the W is, like, impossible to dodge. And it just does so much. It gives you free spells, gives you extra damage, gives you move speed. It's on a really low cooldown. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't mind the whole, like, if you get hit by the bubble and Q combo, you're dead. That's annoying. But, like, on top of it, just the fact that she has all this extra utility is just gross. So, yeah, I think knocking out the damage, I mean, she still gets all these summoner spells. And movement speed. I would lower her movement speed a little bit. I mean, 70% movement speed. That's absurd for 3 seconds. Especially because you can abuse that with Hex Flash. You can just instantly cast Hex Flash and get like that, you know, 70% move speed. So I think that I would have lowered the move speed, but I mean, the damage is fine too. At least they're doing something. Try to address her. So I still think she'll probably be good, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. Cost lowered on Brawler's gloves. Okay. So it's making it easier to buy the gloves, but I think the rest of the items are still the same price. Yeah, the combined cost just increased. They're just letting you get your Brawler's gloves a little faster, but the total price is okay. That's a step in the right direction, but I think they should lower the overall price of the items and just reduce the crit, as I talked about earlier. Storm Razor. Now you get 1% per 0.75 from 1.5%. Okay, so it does less crit. It does less damage. It has less scaling. Okay. I think it's fair. I mean, it's pretty much a nerf to Jhin, primarily. I guess other champs would like this as well, but like Jhin is a bit strong when you go Storm Razor Rapid Fire. Ghost Poro's interesting. Whilst. Are you kidding me? Don't, like, this isn't freaking Old England. Just say while, man. Come on. So you basically get an extra free ward. And some stats. I mean, 20 adaptive stats is pretty nice. It's like 20 AP or 20 AD. I guess it's 20 AP, and then they scale it back to be the equivalency of AD, because AD is more valuable. But yeah, that's like 420 gold or so of value in the late game if you just drop this thing somewhere random in their territory. In addition to vision, I think that's pretty damn good. You can use it for the stats, or you can use it as an extra ward, which is very nice. I think that's actually pretty legit. I don't like this change. So I tried this on the PBE when I was playing for a dodge. They increase the time on it, but your own wards that time out no longer give you the zombie ward, and that just feels really bad because you don't have as much control then where those zombie wards are going to go. Like typically, if you ward appropriately, like you drop 3 wards, then they zombie after however long, 2.5 minutes, then they stay zombied for however an extra minute, then you can drop 3 more wards. And you have like a full minute there of extra vision where you have basically up to 7 wards on the map with your 3 normal wards, your 3 zombie wards, and your control ward. So it feels bad. Like it's nice when you sweep to get, I mean, it's alright. But they had thought about giving you extra stats, I think, for this. Oh yeah. Getting a ward takedown gives you extra bonus damage on your next attack, I think. It just doesn't, like, why? It doesn't make any sense. Like, you kill a ward, you do a bit more damage when you attack. It's just really weird. So I think that Ghost Poro is actually could be legit. I don't know if they're going to increase the vision range of it. One of the main reasons people don't use it right now is because the vision range is like blue ward range or something. It's like 500 instead of the 900 from a standard ward. So it's only like half the vision, which feels bad. The other thing is you can't control where you put it. Just whenever you put it in a bush, it's there. So, I don't know. We'll see. If they increase the vision, it's interesting, though, because you get all those extra stats off of it. So, like, if you put it, this would be something great to, like, put it deep in the enemy jungle or something like that. Just to see where they're going. It'd be like an extra pink ward of sorts that you would want to put deep in there because you would get the stats and you would get some vision, but you'd have to kind of figure out a good place to put it where the lowered vision wouldn't matter as much and where they wouldn't find it. Maybe around like their buff or something. I don't know. And then teleports. They're nerfing teleport. I like this change. Teleport is really frustrating to play against when one team uses it well and the other one doesn't. Especially now that you're seeing like even 80 carries taking it. I like that. Especially the extra cancellation time. So I like it. I think it's good. It's much more punishing. You can't just use your teleport just to go back to lane for, like, you can, but it's going to cost you a lot more opportunity cost to do that. So you have to wait an extra minute, so I like that. I like the changes. I think teleport's a bit on the strong side right now. So, anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. So, yeah, I like the changes so far. Let me know what you think about this this format. Kind of doing this. I'm doing it bi-weekly whenever there's not a patch with patch notes and tier lists and all that stuff coming out. I'm going to try to give you my thoughts on the PBE and just my thoughts on the meta overall. And I'll try to think of, like, things that need nerfs and 5 things that need buffs, just to kind of theory craft League for you a little bit and also put it into the PBE so it's all kind of rolled into one. But anyways, that's it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.